Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it may be when you are tuning in to this broadcast. I am your international award winning author and filmmaker, literary extraordinaire, awe inspiring coach, and host of Educated and Empowered, Tennille M. Jackson. And I want to welcome you all to what is going to be a very great show on today. I am kind of putting a timestamp on the show by letting you know that this is coming the weekend after everything, all the news has broke in the case of Tyree Nichols. And so there are a lot of things that's been going on. Many of you have seen the various footage, camera footage that was released over the weekend, so since Friday. And here's the thing, we have some more news to share. What I thought that I was going to be talking about today, I am yet talking about, but there is some more that has been added. And so, as you all come on, please feel free to say hello and let me know that you are tuned in. Thank you for everyone who is watching. And feel free, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the comment section and I will address them as we go through the show. And so today, again, I want to talk about what we're going to talk about today is what happened with Tyree Nichols. And the title of the show is Tyree Nichols, The Strength of a Mother and the Death of a Culture. And so I know for some people that may seem really deep, but I will definitely explain to you why I picked that title. And so in either case, let's get into it, shall we? So who is Tyree Nichols? Tyree Nichols, had this situation not happened, the reality is that many people would not have heard of him, because for all intents and purposes, most people would probably look at him as being quote unquote just a regular guy, right? He was a 29-year-old Memphian, meaning he was from Memphis, Tennessee. He was, I think they said, an amateur photographer and skateboarder. And so it wasn't that he was doing anything extraordinary, what we deem at least as extraordinary. He was not celebrity status at the point, but now since everything has happened, many of us, we now know his name. Unfortunately, just like many other cases, it is for the wrong reasons. And so we want to understand that um, you never want for you never want for it to be a situation like this to get to know somebody's name, right? A lot of times you'll have it in our society, especially, you will have it where people don't care how they get famous just as long as they get famous, right? And I'm a person that I don't believe in that. I believe that there should be some type of integrity that is attached to your fame and notoriety. Like, to me, I would think that you would want to be famous for the right reasons, right? Like, as opposed to being the biggest drug dealer or the biggest, infidel, or the big, like, you want to be known for the right reasons. And so, unfortunately, this young man will never get to see 30. Unfortunately, we will never know if he would have transitioned from amateur photographer or amateur skateboarder to professional, because his life was taken um, senselessly, needlessly. And I just want to kind of talk about that for a moment. I want to talk about all the things that led up as far as we the public know. Now, again, if you have never watched one of my shows, let me tell you that I am not the gossip person, so I'm not going to go into he say she say. What I typically do is I put the information that we receive out there so that it is now in a platform ready for discourse or dialogue, right? I am a person who believes that everyone can state how they feel. You may not always agree, but we should be able to be mature enough to agree to disagree, even in the cases that are necessary. And so, with this case, what we know from body cam footage is that there was a young man by the name of Tyree Nichols who was pulled over by the police. Now, what many of our eyes beheld initially was the five gentlemen who, and I'm being so kind, y'all. I am being so kind in saying gentlemen. But many of you, these we saw um the five former police officers in the persons of Demetrius Haley, Tadarius Bean, Emmett Martin III, Desmond Mills, and Justin Smith. We saw those five individuals. We saw footage of those five individuals beating this young man to death, literally beating him to death. That's what we initially saw. Now, earlier today, it was released that indeed there was a stop before the one that we initially encountered, and that was with a black police officer and a white police officer. So the white police officer's name was Preston Hemphill. He has since been released or fired from the Memphis PD. However, there are no other charges at this time being brought against him. And so they showed that footage from his personal body cam, and what that body cam disclosed was the fact that they pulled him out the car. So the same way we saw him being drugged out of his car, that was the exact same thing that happened. So what we saw today was a little bit different because at least the various videos I saw was always him just being snatched out of the car. And, you constantly hear Tyree asking, what did I do? What did I do? Right. And so these two initial police officers, the white cop and the black cop, they were trying to get him to the ground. They never said what he did. Okay. So what happened was he's like, okay, because y'all doing a little bit much, he's like, I'm on the ground. And they're forcefully saying, okay, turn, get on your stomach or whatever, whatever. And so when he's seeing that this is getting to be, and I can only imagine how he must have felt in that moment, right? I can only imagine that as he is seeing what's happening through his mind is probably some of the other images that have become a little bit too normal for our society. So many times, Black people, I won't even say men because I'll tell a story in a moment, a personal story in a moment, but so many times, because of everything that has transpired in our society. I mean, I'm not talking about historically, I'm not talking about in slavery years, I'm not even talking about in the 1900s, right? Because we're in the year 2000. I'm talking about here recently. Like, if you simply watch the news, it's enough to create some anxiety within you whenever you see or hear sirens, right? Because, you're like, oh my goodness, it's almost at the point where you wonder, are you going to make it out alive? Because this Tyree Nichols case was a prime example how there was no reason to pull him over. And this, again, is not opinion. This is what was stated by the chief of the Memphis PD. When they looked through all the footage, they came to the conclusion that he should have never even been pulled over. And so what we saw were the video clips of him being snatched out of the car, thrown to the ground, and him steadily asking, what did I do? What did I do? What I saw today was footage from the white police officer, Preston Hemphill, trying to talk to him or whatever. But again, and when I say talk to him, I don't mean respectfully. Like, he was still, kind of forceful with his language. And when Tyree would not lay still, because I imagine that he was kind of seeing that this was not going to end well with him, he got up in an attempt to run away. And so then they show Preston Hemphill discharging his taser, or I'm sorry, the stun gun, stun gun, taser, same thing. But you know, this chart, what they call it, it had. He said that it had been deployed, so he deployed his stun gun, and but Tyree still was able to run. And so the white officer, Hemp Hill, as well as the other officer that was on the scene, they chased him, but he got away from them, right? And so then they ended up calling it in, and this is where all of the other police officers that we now know, this is where they came in. So again, initially it was Preston Hemphill, Officer Preston Hemphill, or former Officer Preston Hemphill, and one of the black guys. They gave chase because Tyree Nichols ran away, and then after, and they could not catch him. They did some dispatch, and then you see, this is where the 5 black police officers came into play. This is where they all enter the scene, right? And so one of the reasons why I wanted to give that backstory, because many people were not told about Officer or former Officer Hemp Hill. We were just told about the 5 black officers. But again, upon researching it and figuring out the why, it's because Preston Hemp Hill was not one of the 5 that was at the scene. He was not actually responsible for Tyree Nichols' death. After Tyree fled the scene and the other 5 officers caught him, then Officer Hemphill was never on that scene again. However, he was still fired, but they're saying at this time that there are no other charges being brought against him at this time. Okay, so I just want to catch you up to where we are thus far. And so we talk about Tyree Nichols. Many of you at this point have seen the various video clips, and I put on social media that for those of you who choose not to look at if you choose not to watch the video clips, right? Because for many people, it can be triggering. If you are a person that suffers with anxiety, if something like this has happened to you or someone in your family, someone you may know, a friend, because again, unfortunately, this is not uncommon, especially in the African American community. What happened to Tyree is not uncommon. And so for many people, it may trigger something. And so what I put on social media was, even if you choose not to watch, don't allow yourself not to see, right? Don't allow yourself not to see what it is that's going on. And so for me, this really, and many people chose not to watch the video. Many people believe, and I'm not opposed to it. I initially was not going to watch the video. I'm not, I'm indifferent about what I saw. And this is what I mean. Inside, when I initially watched it, I was angry because you kept hearing this young man ask time and time again, what did I do? What did I do? Right. And so let me just kind of set up for you, those of you who may go through like an average dealing with the police, what it should be, right? Versus what actually happened. And so, and maybe this varies on where you live. I live in Chicago. And so typically what police, at least CPD protocol typically is, normally police officers ride around in twos. Them along with a partner, right? And so if you are pulled over, then what is customary, again, in the black community, especially if it's a black man, it's customary to have your hands on the steering wheel or on the dashboard, so that way they know that you are not armed. It is customary that they will walk up to your car. They will ask for license and registration, and then you hand them that, and then it goes from there. That's typically how it goes, right? But that's how it's supposed to go. But that is not how it goes many times in the African American community. And that is not how it went in the case of Tyree Nichols. Again, what you see is them pull, regardless of which video you watch, you never see them ask for his license and registration. From jump, you saw them opening the door. And again, There may be some footage that we did not see. There may be some clips that were not shown. But what was released was seeing this young man being snatched out of his car. That's what was released. What was shown was never anybody asking for driver's license, registration from jump. They got out of their car. They went to his car. They opened his door. They snatched him out. They threw him to the ground and told him to get on the ground. And all the while, he's steadily saying, "What did I do? What did I do? What did I do? What did I do?" And so, again, in this video that was released today, because what we were seeing, I guess, was like mixtures of two videos. The video that I saw went from that to showing the five former officers, showing them beat him up. Like literally, you would have thought that it was a gang initiation, because all of them were making sure that they got, that they got a piece of him. All of them were tagging him. And what's crazy to me is the fact that they were not the officers that were even aware of what initially happened. When Tyree ran away from the officers who were using excessive force and unnecessary force, when he ran away because he feared for his life, then these other officers were called to the scene. Okay. And so they show on the scene, they show that the black officer, because again, remember I told you the initial incident occurred between former officer Preston Hemphill, one of the black officers, I didn't get his name, and Tyree. And so in their in their interaction with Tyree, pepper spray was sprayed. The white officer sprayed the pepper spray, but he ended up getting it in the black guy's eye. And so he was steadily flushing his eye. The white officer was trying to help the black officer flush his eye once Tyree had ultimately got away, right? But then they called for backup. And so here is my point. Now, this entire time, this gentleman is asking, "What did I do? What did I do? What did I do? What did I do?" He was never told what he did. Again, I say, what police protocol is supposed to be, number one, they're supposed to ask you for your license and registration. Number two, they're supposed to let you know why they pulled you over. They are not supposed to just misuse their power and just because they're the police pull you over just because. There is actually supposed to be just cause for them to pull you over. In this case, that is not what happened. And so, and I'm reminded, my husband and I, we were on the way home. I don't remember where we were coming from, but the point was, or the point is, I was driving and I didn't have my coat on because I'm in the car, heat is on. So my coat that had my license is in the back seat. And I'm driving and we're talking, my husband and I, we're talking. And next thing we know, we see sirens. And so I'm like, what, we look at each other like, what's going on? Because I'm clueless as to why there are sirens happening, right? And so I pulled over because I'm thinking they must be going after somebody else. But no, once I pulled over, then they pulled over right behind me. And so I looked at my husband and instantly I kind of started shaking a little bit. Now, keep in mind, I don't have no drugs in the car. I don't have drugs in my system. I don't have a gun on me. There is nothing in the car. There is no reason that I have to be nervous. However, at the end of the day, you never know what is going to happen. And it's so sad that you live in a world where it doesn't matter if you did anything right or not. You are at the behest of the police because if you don't stop when they pull you over, now it's a chase. And so now you're automatically wrong. If you do stop when they pull you over, now you are literally just praying as hard as you can that you're getting a right officer, somebody who actually got the job for real and they're a legitimate police officer and not just one of these thugs like what happened with Tyree Nichols. And so continuing in my story, we're sitting there, and again, typically you're just told, hey, if it's a man, for the man to have their hand on the dashboard. Let me tell you something. I don't want no trouble. So my hands are on the steering wheel. He has his hands on the dashboard. But both the police officers, one is walking up on my side, one is walking up on his side. So, they were nice enough, greeted us, how are you? How you doing? And the officers like license and registration. And I'm like, I have to reach in the back seat to get my license because it's in my coat pocket, and my coat pocket is in the back seat. So I was already nervous to have to do that because you never know what they might be thinking. Because initially, when we were pulled over, I was gonna go and reach for it, but that was before they reached the window, and I didn't want for them to think anything that way. So I explained to them slowly, just like that I need to reach in the back seat so that I can get my license, so that I can get my phone, so I can show you my registration. And so it was a young lady on my side, and she said, okay, fine, go ahead. And so the partner that's on my husband's side, he has the flashlight, in the car, whatever. And so I get the license, I hand it to her, and I'm like, my registration is on my phone. Can I, do you want me to give you the phone? And she's like, no, I'm gonna just take your license right now. And she walked it to the car. So at this point, I still don't know why she pulled me over. And so I'm sitting there, and I asked my husband, I said, should we call somebody? Like, do we need to have somebody, on the line to kind of record just as a witness to what's going on? And he was like, don't worry about it, we'll be fine. And so I was like, okay. Now I need y'all to understand, this don't mean that I don't have faith in God. This just means I also understand how the enemy operates. Okay. And so she walked back up to the car, and I asked her if she wanted to see my registration. And she was like, do you know why I pulled you over? And I said, actually, no, I don't. And so she said, your brighter lights were not on. So we could see so basically I needed to click. So I don't have a car where my lights automatically turn on. So instead of clicking twice, apparently I only clicked once. So they were not able to see my brighter lights. And so I clicked them on for her. And she was like, okay, well, that's great. Have a good night. And so, like, I had to just sit there for a minute and like, because it does not make sense that that's the land in which we live. And whereas, say 3 weeks ago when it happened, someone may have said, oh, that's really overreacting. 3 weeks later, we have a young man who still does not know why he was pulled over, who was never informed what he'd done wrong. And even when the chief and other police officers went back to review all of the camera clips, they could find no reason why he should have ever been pulled over. And now here he is deceased. So it's not far-fetched. You could have just as easily gotten an officer who was after blood, because that's definitively what this was. And when I say it was really like, you would have thought that it was initiation. You would have thought that he was like, that this was, 1990, whatever. Again, I'm talking about when I was a teenager. I don't even know if gangs still act this way. But back in the day, if you were trying to get in the gang, you had to be jumped in. And you would have thought that he was trying to get in their gang or something, because when I say how they were all just beating on him, and then what made it worse is the fact that they were bragging about everything that had transpired. They were bragging about how they used all this pepper spray, and how, they were hitting him with this, and how they all tased him. And let me say this guy, Tyree Nichols, from his mother's admission, is about 6'2", 6'3", 150 pounds. The smallest one of these police officers, the smallest one, was 205 pounds. The smallest one. All these was big dudes, like they played NFL or pro wrestlers or whatever. I'm talking about any 205, 250, 275. All these dudes, one of them individually could have taken him. You mean to tell me that it takes 5 five, five of you all to get him under control. It takes five of you all to beat him down. It takes five of you all to use your tasers. You mean to tell me that one of y'all, if he was still squirming, because that's how you would treat him, like he's some bug, like he's some animal. If he was still squirming, you mean to tell me one person couldn't just held him down, and the other person put his hands behind his back, put the cuffs on, and put him in a police car? It really took all of that. All right, I'm going to digress, because the two things that you heard Tyree say repeatedly was, one, what did I do? And I guess as he was either in and out of consciousness, or he understood that this was basically it, you heard him calling for his mother. Okay. And many people in watching that, you're going to automatically think back to what happened with George Floyd. But here's the thing, here's the difference. George Floyd may have been doing that because of the fact that he was passing out or what have you. Tyree was literally 80 feet from his home, 3 blocks away. And so I'm sure that when he's yelling for his mother, the hope was that there would be somebody out on the block, if not his mother. There would be somebody that would see something and say something, that there would be somebody that would try to help. But then again, what do when who you would call the police are the ones that are displaying the animalistic behavior? Who do you call then, and what do you do then? When the firemen who pull up don't even try to come to his aid, when the paramedics pull up, I mean, like, where is the help? Where is the humanity? But let's then transition, because you all know me. I try to find a way. It's absolutely horrible, absolutely heartbreaking, and unimaginable. Absolutely, it is. Um, but then I watched the interview by CNN's Don Lemon, who he interviewed the mother, the father. I don't want to say stepfather, but technically mother, stepfather, and then their attorney. But the second part of this, because again, this broadcast is titled Tyree Nichols, The Strength of a Mother and the Death of a Culture. Let me tell you something. When I saw his mother, first of all, I will say this. I don't think that they were expecting her to be able to be as poised, as intelligent, to have as much integrity and composure as she possessed. Because again, the way that mainstream media likes to portray us is that, they only want to get Black people who are going to act ignorant. They only want to get Black people who are going to sound uneducated. They only want to get Black people who will go viral for the wrong reasons. That's how mainstream media typically likes to portray Black people. Okay. And so when I tell you all, even for those people who may say that you're not strong enough to watch the video clips, I encourage you to watch the CNN interview that Don Lemons did with Rovon Wells, because this is a lesson that everybody needs to learn. Here this woman is, just lost her son. And first of all, just her ability to be poised in the interview. Okay. And no, it wasn't done the same day. But the point is, it hadn't been a week since her child died. Let something happen to one of my children. And everything in me wants to believe that I would be strong enough or that I would be, as the church folks would say, saved enough to be able, after 2 or 3 days, to just sit and talk to the public. Like, it's, just because, most of you that know me know that I'm very transparent. It's not too many things that I have gone through that I won't share, because it's, for me, it is about helping somebody else go through and grow through. Baby, not even a week. It, like, we ain't even had the funeral yet, and you were in my house talking about the, like, I'm saying, even if one of my children passed away from natural causes, I don't care what the thing is. If something happened to one of my children, she, for me, was an example as a mother, as a woman, as a Black person. Let me say that, because men can watch this and really get a lesson too. The poise, the dignity in which she conducted that interview. Um, I just don't know that I could have not been so far removed from the incident. And yes, she did cry a couple times. My goodness, but the way that that lady held it together, and she never said a bad word about these people. I it's all I could do to even refer to them as former officers. She never had a bad word to say about them. What she continued to say, what she continued to say was that she felt sorry for them. She continued to say that they have no idea what they've done to our community. But I think one of the most admirable statements that she made throughout the course of this interview, because again, keep in mind, this is her baby. He's 29 years old. And she says how, like, she never get to hug him again, never get to kiss him again, none of these things. But she said, I guess God had an assignment for him, and his assignment is over. And I just wonder how many of us, even believers, look at our lives as being an assignment. How many believers are like, okay, we know that that's the spiritually correct thing to say, when people in church and all of this and that, and they'll say, hey, I know that I'm on assignment. And I say that, and I actually do believe that. I actually, for me, I understand that I got to get up out of here one day. And I know that everything that I am doing is purposed. First of all, it's purpose. I can end it there. But I'm doing it understanding that I'm commissioned to do what it is that I do to help educate and empower people on whatever levels and platforms that I do it. But there are not a lot of people who could say, especially in the moment, how fresh that moment is, and be able to say genuinely that he accomplished his mission, like he did what he was purposed to do, and now God called him back. Oh my goodness, like that woman has a place in heaven. That's all I'm gonna say. I mean, like, I don't know her prior to this, don't know what her history was, her past was, but I will say this: if that's not who you are on the inside, you can't just make up that, because that's not even courage. That's not, like, that's true Jesus in you. And you can't just make that up for the cameras, especially when they're going through talking about everything that transpired. You can't just make that up if you ain't got that in you, because what's in you is going to come out regardless. And that's what we saw with gentlemen who had the badges on, and I'm being nice even to calling them gentlemen, because the reality is that they displayed thug like behavior. So we'll just leave it there. But what's in you, badge or no badge, what's in you will come out of you. Yeah, but here's the thing, Sharon. The police told his parents that he was arrested for DUI, but there was no proof of that. And even in terms of when they looked back at the video, the chief said that there was no cause for them to have pulled him over. He was 3 blocks away from his home. And I've had many of you know that I produced a documentary and wrote a book that's geared toward Black men. The documentary is called The Four Eyes of the Black Man, and it's talking about integrity and influence and insecurity and impact. And in the identity section of the documentary, multiple men talked about their encounters with the police. And one of the guys that I interviewed said, like, mostly the stops that he's been pulled over for, he's normally within 5 minutes of his home, because of the fact that he lives in more of an affluent neighborhood. And the fact that it's always, you know what, I'm not supposed to say always and never, but it's always racial profiling. Like, we keep telling our people that you can aspire to be great. We keep telling our people that, you know, you can be just as successful as your white counterpart. You keep telling people that if you work hard, hard work will pay off for you. But isn't the irony that when that hard work, when said hard work does pay off, now there's racial profiling happening? Like, you keep telling me that I can be whatever I want to be until you see me driving a nice car. Then it must be because I sell drugs. You keep telling me that I can have whatever I want to have until you see me in a nice house. Then it must be that I'm in the wrong neighborhood. Like, do we even believe the narrative that we're feeding to our own people? Because unless somebody gives you cause, why are you just pulling them over? Because they're in a certain neighborhood, because they drive a certain car. Why is the assumption that, oh, it must be stolen or they must be lost? There are so many things, so many issues that I have, which kind of transitions me to the final part of this, which is the death of a culture. And this is what I mean by it. So, again, I'm talking about Black people now. Like, there is no political correctness in me right now. I'm just being as real as I can be. For so long, you know, in our community, you didn't want, I should say communities, because it's more than one, but y'all know where I'm going with it. A lot of times people were not trying to be police officers, like, because of what they saw. But then you had certain police officers who want to change the narrative. And what I read in preparation for this show was that some of those officers, some of the five, I don't remember how many, I think it was either two or three of the five, they did not, they were not hired onto the police force until 2020, when the standards for hiring had lowered, right? Because remember, think about COVID time, and you guys can go and research it for yourselves. But during COVID time, and again, keep in mind this is in Memphis, so they needed more staff. Like, there are people who need enforcement, right? But if you only have X amount of police officers, and again, even in what I'm saying now, I'm still not of the mindset that all police officers are bad police officers. I do know and believe that there are some good police officers. I do know and believe that enforcement is necessary, because at the end of the day, if we try, you cannot live in this world in an all or nothing mentality, right? And what do I mean by that? because we still have thieves. We still have, so whether you're talking about petty thieves, like the person who had broken my car last year and stole my wallet, so you still have petty thieves that break into cars and houses. You have people that's robbing banks. So you still have a reason to need law enforcement. You have people that are victims of domestic violence, sexual abuse. So there are still reasons why we need our laws to be enforced. I still believe that. I believe that there are police officers who actually take their oath and they don't misuse their power. It's just hard to believe. It's really hard because of the fact that when you listen to um our the news that they show about us, because it's always about us. It's always about us. And it's like whenever you see the news about us, then it is always something negative. It's always something negative. And we have to understand that it shouldn't always be something negative. It shouldn't always be where, this person gets pulled over, but they never make it back home. That should not be the case. It should not be that. And now it's a point where it doesn't matter whether it's male or female, right? And I am not asking for there to be violence among or against other races, but I'm just saying that you can't keep denying the fact that you are not seeing white people, male or female, get pulled over and ending up dead. You don't see Asians, Hispanics, any other race to the degree, percentage wise, that you see black people, it happening to us. And so when you now have something like this where it's black officers, and it wasn't even, and again, please pardon me if this sounds like I'm being racist, because I promise that I'm not racist, I'm not prejudiced. This is just, it is what it is, because at the end of the day, I have friends of all ethnicities around the world, okay, like literally. And so I need you to understand that this is just it is what it is. Maybe it's tight, but it's right, okay? It's like that type of situation. And I need you to understand this: it would have been perceived differently from the public on both sides of the coin if it would say 4 white officers and 1 black officer. That would have been perceived different. White people would have been like, well, I'm sure he got what he deserved. And I'm using the word he very nicely because depending on which white people, it might have been a different noun used as swapped out with he. Okay. But white people would have said, okay, I'm sure he got what he deserved. Black people would have said, well, even though they might would have been disappointed with the black officer, they probably would have felt like, well, he had to, he was in subjection to the white officers. Like, even if he was, it would have blew our mind if the black officer would have been the sergeant or the captain or whatever, because again, here is where our own prejudices exist. If it's 4 white people and 1 black person, most black people would not assume that the black person was the one that was in power. So the automatic assumption would have been that he was acting under instruction from his commanding officer. Would have been a different level of understanding. But when you have all 5 black officers and there was no type of dignity to nothing that they did. Like, from the moment that they took him out the car, you could tell that it was premeditated. There was nothing in them that was trying to make sure that that man lived. Nothing. They were not going to stop until he was unconscious. You could tell that from jump, because again, I say, if police officers are normally sent out by twos, even once they apprehended him, It took all five. So for the people who look up to police officers, one of two things are going to happen. Either now you're giving the message that, oh, it's okay to bully somebody as long as you're a police officer. Or you're going to say, see, this is how come black people can't be in positions of authority because they can't handle power. And here's what makes it crazy. That's not just black people, right? It's bad police officers, regardless of the color. But because, and this is what the mother was meaning when she said that they have no idea how they have hurt our communities because they black people. Like, and I'm sure when they had gone to school or whatever you go, the academy or whatever it's called, I'm sure once they graduated and once they found out that they were making it and they were going to actually be police officers, I am sure that whether it was their immediate family or not, all types of communities was probably praising them because you like, man, that's our people right there. Like there's just this innate thing, whether it's right or not. And I don't think that this is a Chicago thing. I think this is a black person thing. When we see a black person make it and do something, like case in point, when Kamala Harris became the first black vice president, right? Like it wasn't even just the fact that it was a woman, more so, or at least as much as the fact as it was a black woman. Like whether we knew her or not, some of us have never seen her on nothing in real life. Some people probably never even heard of her before you found out that she was going for the assistant vice president. But once you knew that a sister was about to be vice president, everybody was wearing Chucks and pearls. You hear me? I'm talking about all us now. I went out and found me some Chucks, and y'all know me. I'm not normally one that participate in certain trends, but baby, I had on my pearls. I did my own little, Tennille's to it because I didn't have white pearls. I had on some gray pearls because I'm putting my own spin on whatever it is. But I had some pearls and I had on some Chucks. Why? What? We bringing us with Tanji Jackson? What? So whether we know you or not, baby, when you are doing good things for us, you're representing us. All of the people who said that black people are stupid, are dumb, are not intelligent, are incapable, there's no way that you will ever, they won't never amount to anything. Like you still got so many people even today that call us niggas. And yes, I said it that way because that's how they say it. They refer to us as niggas, that think of like negative things about us. When you see us driving in a particular neighborhood, you still got certain people who will go and call a police officer talking about that we don't belong here when you don't know why we in the neighborhood. You just see the color of our skin and you assume that we don't have a reason to be there. That's still happening in 2023. It's still happening. So that when you see some black people get in positions, not just of prestige, but authority as well, like all the times and ways that we done been counted out, I'm sure all five of them, whether they graduate the academy at the same time or not, when they came through, folks was proud of them because you doing it for us. And look at what you done did to us. You went from doing it for us to doing it to us. Because now, more than ever, because once upon a time, like black people ain't never felt safe being pulled over by the police. And please understand, as I shared in my earlier story, that it's not just black people who are actually guilty. Because again, understand that in no way am I biased. Do I understand that black people kill each other all the time? Yes, I do. I was one of the people who was in the unpopular crowd when we was pushing Black Lives Matter. Yes, I understand that Black Lives Matter, but what I need them to do is not just matter to y'all when white people killing us. I need it to matter to y'all when black people are killing us too. Our lives need to matter to each other as much as they matter to other races. And maybe if other races saw that our lives matter to each other, then they wouldn't be so quick to try to take them from us. But that's neither here nor there. That's a whole nother show. But the point is, there was probably some little girl some little boy that looked up to them, whether they knew them or not, whether they tried or not. That was like, because of them, I want to be a police officer. Because I see a Black police officer in my neighborhood, now I think that is possible too. So I'm not saying that there'll never be another Black police officer. I'm not saying it'll never be another police officer, Black police officer in Memphis. What I'm saying is, it's gonna be a minute before anybody feels safe again being pulled over. Because, like I was saying before, once upon a time, you know, again, regardless, if you are a citizen and you got pulled over by a police officer, you kind of felt like you had a chance if it was a Black officer. Because even if you was wrong, even if I did run the light, even if I didn't stop at the stop sign, even, my brake light was out, even if you was guilty, you were able to kind of kid and joke or whatever, and you knew, yeah, go ahead, give me a ticket. I know. But and we still don't know. We still don't know why and according to the police, there was no cause. So you know what message that sends? What that message sends, what that says is nobody is safe. Whether that's the truth or not, that's the message that it sends. You could be innocent or guilty, and it don't matter. You can get pulled over. You can have your license or don't have your license, and depend on a police officer. Maybe you're going to make it home and maybe you won't. And now it don't even matter if the police officer is Black or white. Now you feel just as a citizen, as a resident, you feel just as anxious, just as unsafe. Like, there is no certainty. That's sad. And I'm not making this a gospel show or a Christian show, but I will say this: it would behoove you, as my father would say, it would behoove you to get a relationship with God, because I can just about guarantee you, and I can call him a baby because he almost young enough to have been a son, but definitely young enough to be a younger brother. I guarantee you that baby did not leave that house that day and think that he was not going to make it back home. You better understand that time is winding up. You don't know when your last day will be. And the unfortunate part that happened because as a result of this is not make people think like it don't even matter if I'm guilty or not. Because if they want to find a reason, they'll find a reason. And now it ain't just enough to wrongfully arrest somebody. You killed him? What did he do? Even if someone said a DUI, even if he was drunk, even if, and again, there was no evidence to that, but even if he was drunk, that gave you cause to take his life? Like, I'm just, maybe it's the journalist in me. I just want to know what it is that he could have done so bad. I mean, and again, it wasn't even one of them beating him down while the other four watched, which would have made it even worse. Because now y'all just gonna sit there and watch his life being taken. But all five of y'all just sent them from person to person. Again, like you'd have thought this was a gang initiation. I mean, just beating the dude down, just beating him down. Really? What happened before you got that call? What was going on in your life? Because apparently every wrong that had ever been done to them in their lifetime all came up, and they want to take everything. All of them want to take everything Every bad thing ever done to them, they decided at the moment that when they got that call, because it was even before they got them, it was already because you don't just happen to hurt somebody that way. Maybe you happen to stun them or tase them when you didn't know that it was deploying, or maybe one person meant to spray some pepper spray. All five of y'all emptied out all y'all pepper spray on this one person, and emptying out the pepper spray, which would have blinded him. Him being blinded wasn't enough for y'all to then be able to apprehend him. Because now I'm wondering what skills do you have if it's five of y'all, first of all? Because not for nothing, but when I didn't need five people to help me beat up somebody. I'm just saying what it is. So you cowards at best, because the smallest one of y'all is 50 pounds heavier than he is. And it's five of y'all. Between 200 and 300 pounds, it's five of y'all. And one of y'all ain't man enough to take on this one man. It ain't no man no more. Y'all decided when you pulled up that this was going to be a street fight. So if it was going to be a street fight, then let it be a street fight. Let it be a fair fight. Let him go against your one dude that was already big. I don't care which one you picked. All of y'all was bigger than him one-on-one. If you was going to make it a street fight, then make it a fair fight. They had already decided this man wasn't going to make it home, period. And for what reason? That's what the public is still trying to figure out. To that mother, I am so sorry. Like, what can you say? I have lost so many people, but never a child. And I don't think that it ever matters how old the child is. I don't think that there's a difference between losing a newborn or losing a child when they're 45. Because it's just something that suggests that the parent is supposed to die before the child. And now she has to live the rest of her life, as she said, never being able to hear his voice again. And I'm sure, because she wasn't able to watch the video, but I'm sure all she's going to hear, because she saw pieces, but I'm saying she didn't see the whole thing. All is probably going to be going through, because that's even what she said some on the interview, is just hearing the fact that her son was calling for her and not being able to be there for him, not being able to comfort him, not being able, like, that's the lasting memory that she has. And so, but what I will say is this: based upon how she conducted herself, I know this woman got a relationship with God. And so I pray for peace for her husband, for their entire family. I pray for peace for the city of Memphis. I pray for peace for anybody who watched that and felt like it gave them cause to try to start trouble. So we speak against civil unrest. We pray that there be no looting, because that's the same mess that happened with George Floyd. Because I'm still trying to figure out, what is the mentality that says if a police officer kills a Black person, that the solution is to go and destroy all of the businesses in Black neighborhoods? I still haven't put that two and two together, but I'm praying that there be no looting. Even his mother got up and said, if you all are going to protest, please do it peacefully. I mean, and the fact that she's not calling for any injustice, any harm to be done to these five guys, not calling for nothing bad to happen to them. She continued to say that I'm not more hurt because they were Black. She said, no police officer, period, regardless of the color. She said, but because they were black, she said, I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for them. And so I say an extended and a continued prayer for Ms. Rovon Wells, for her husband, because I cannot even imagine the pain of losing your child, and especially like this, 3 blocks from home. But I tried to do this show in a way that, yeah, I went over certain details, but I tried not to be totally graphic out of respect for those who chose not to watch the video, because as much as I said it, seeing it is even worse. It's even more that I didn't say. And so, as I said on my Facebook post, even if you choose not to watch the video, please don't allow yourself not to see. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate all of you all so much. And again, the goal is to be going, giving you some new shows with Educated and Empowered. And when I do Educated and Empowered, what I do a lot of times is I'm giving a lot of different topics, from relationships to self-help to spiritual matters to work-life balance. And then it can also be current affairs, such as today. And so I do ask that if you want to, hear more, in addition to the show that I do on social media, I also have an Educated and Empowered podcast that you can access by either going to anchor.fm or Spotify or iHeart, any of the major streaming platforms. And for just $3.99, you can become not a sponsor, I'm sorry, subscriber. For $3.99, you can become a subscriber to the show. And so I do ask that you go there. And there are so many, I want to say it's probably about 60 or more podcasts that's there. And you'll be able to have access to all of them as a subscriber. You get everything that I've ever put out under that podcast. So go ahead to anchor.fm/educated and empowered and subscribe today. And so I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Continue to pray for not just, Rovon, but we even have to be able to pray for our enemies. And many of you have automatically made enemies of those 5 former police officers. And I would encourage you to challenge yourself and even say a prayer for them. Because now, whatever capacities they are in, whether they are somebody's son, somebody's husband, somebody's father, somebody's brother, there are 5 additional lives that are also going to be altered because of bad decision-making skills. So say a prayer for them, because at the end of the day, it's easy to pray for people that we love. It's easy to pray for people that do right by us. But where the reward is being able to pray for those who have wronged you. So that's all for now, guys. Until next time, you all stay inspired.